The Vitrolife Academy studio here at 𝗃𝗹𝗶𝗱𝘁𝗁 in Milan. I'm now going to hand over to Reidun Kuhlmann. She's going to do a session on the validation of the time-lapse instruments for pH and CO2. Thanks, Reidun.
Thank you. As Tkun told you, I'm going to demonstrate how to validate the internal sensors of the gas sensors and the temperature sensors. And in case these are out of range, I'll show you how to calibrate the internal sensors. In the end of the session, we will also talk about how to perform pH measurement, and there are two options. The frequency of your validation, even though it's a very stable incubator, you still need to do your external validation on a regular basis. It depends on your standard operating procedures how often you perform this. But Vitrolife still recommend that to be performed at least every 14 days. Before you start doing your validation and calibration, it is important that the analyzers that you are using are newly calibrated to ensure an accurate measurement. We will start with the validation of CO2, because if we start with the temperature measurement, we need to open up the load door for inserting the probe, and we want to measure when it's absolutely stable. So of course you do it also in the morning. What you do is that you start by pressing on this small tool here in the corner, here, and we want to measure the first here the CO2 and O2. It is so for this demonstration we were only able to set it up with CO2 and not nitrogen to reduce the oxygen, but the principle is exactly the same. So for this demonstration I'll only do it with a CO2. So I press here and you can see the CO2. Then I open up here where you get access to the input chamber. So I attach the tube here. So this small one has to be fastened tightly. My tube. Okay, now it's fastened. And then I turn the valve here to the left so you get access to the input chamber. And then I turn on the fan. We recommend to wait 10-15 minutes to before you make your reading on your analyzer. But due to limited time here for this session, we don't have time for that. So I just demonstrate in case it's out of range. So the set point here is 6.7%, according to the specification of the GTL media. And let's pretend that your analyzer shows 6.3%. So it means that that we have to calibrate plus 0.3%. We can follow here the graph when it's stable. So it is actually quite stable now. But let's pretend that we should calibrate. Then you go into CO2, and then I will press 3 times on the plus, because each step reflects 0.1%. So 1, 2, 3, and then I confirm. And then it starts calibrating. And everything is would be documented here. You can see last time you calibrated and validated actually. And actually you can also see here how many door openings have happened, so you can do your troubleshooting later on. It will also be documented on the patient that have been cultured in the instrument while you did your validation. So you can always track that. Good. What I would say of when should you actually calibrate? We don't recommend you to calibrate when the deviation is 0.2 and less, because due to weather-related changes in the weather, hereby, you know, when there is a storm or low and high pressure, that affects your analyzer. The embryoscope by itself will take that into account, so you should not be afraid of that. But when you do your analysis, you'll get a wrong reading. So don't do your measurement and calibration if it deviates less than and up to 0.2. If it deviates more than 0.3%, then you should call Vitrolife technical support for advice. But what I would do normally is if it's there in between 0.3, then you calibrate as just shown before. Okay? And you can see here the graph. Now it has changed. You can see the calibration has performed. Good. So this is all about the CO2. It will be exactly the same when you validate your O2. So I think I'm going to continue with the O2, the temperature validation and calibration. And what I would say, actually, if you're using a reliable medium like TTL medium, we know that it's very stable. It's the same pH every time. So then just do your CO2 measurement on a regular basis. This is sufficient. But I will touch the pH measurement in the end anyway, if you prefer to do that. Good. So then I just press here on the plus, on the press. I take off the tube, and I remember to put the valve to the right again. So it's closed to the embryo chamber. Good. And put on the cover plate as well. So now we will continue with the temperature validation and calibration. When you perform calibration and validation of the temperature, Vitrolife recommends you to use a high precision thermometer, and the probe should be, let me see here, the size or diameter of the probe should be 1 millimeter, because it should fit directly into the channel, temperature channel, when you do your validation to make an accurate measurement. The rotating plates that holds the dishes and move them to the camera has 2 independent working temperature sensors. And if one of them should have a malfunction accidentally, the other one will take completely over the control, and there will be a measurement, a warning here on the screen that you should contact Vitrolife technical support, and they will come immediately according to the maintenance and service agreement that you have. But you can still contact your embryos inside because the other one is taking over. But still, you should validate and calibrate each of them individually. But for this demo, I will just show you from temperature setting. So then I just press here on A, and this rotating plate will now move to this area where I can insert the probe. And this is a channel that goes next to where the embryos resides when they are cultured. So I put the probe in here, and it is important, it is completely into this channel. And while I'm closing the load door, it's always a good idea to put the cable up here. If the measurement is really out of range, I would just check if it's going out of the hole. Yeah. And then I start the measurement. What you should take into account here is that this rotating plate is heated up to 37.3 degrees to ensure 37 where the embryos are cultured. So there is an offset of 0 plus 0.3 degree. So it means that when I do my test here, it should measure 37.3 degrees. Okay, is that clear? Good. So yeah, now it's already 37.2. We should wait around 10 minutes before you read your measurement. We don't have time for that now, but I'll just show you how you calibrate them if you have to calibrate. So let's pretend Now it's actually showing 37.2. So what I would do is that I want to match what is on my analyzer. So here I press on the sensor A, and then I will calibrate minus 0.1. And then I press on confirm. Because 0.2 means 36.9 where the 𝗹𝗺𝗀𝗀𝗃 comes. I press here, and then you start calibrating. And again, you will see here on the screen, and everything is documented what I already have done. Okay, so that's actually clear. One important thing here is that before you start resume and continue image acquisition, it is important that you remove your probe. So I press here first, and then it's asking, have you removed your probe? No, I haven't, not yet. So I take it out, and I confirm. This is important. Good. So then I will briefly touch pH measurement. There are two options actually. If you're using a blood gas analyzer, only a small amount of medium is needed for the measurement, and you can simply use a standard 𝗃𝗹𝗶𝗀𝗁𝗃. And then you would add 270 microliters in each of the reservoir and overlay 1.6 mils of oil. And then you would do the culture in the embryoscope for 24 hours. And the next day, of course, you start calibrating also your 𝗧𝗏 or your blood gas analyzer. And then you take the sample and do the pH measurement immediately after you have removed it. This is the most accurate one. But there are some clinics that still use standard pH meters. Then they should insert a micro or mini probe, and more medium is required. And then we have designed this pH validation dish. So it's actually just a simple, a standard dish, but we have this designed this silicone lid that is semi-permeable for CO2 molecules, and it can replace the oil, and then we have more space for medium inside, so you can enter the probe inside the dishes after equilibration. So you add 3.5 milliliters of the culture medium, and adding the silicone lid, and make sure it is tightly fastened around the edge. And then you put it into the embryoscope, name it pH dish when it's asked for which kind of dish it is, and you culture for 8 to 24 hours. The next morning, before you remove the dish from the incubator, of course, you start by calibrating your standard pH meter and prepare all the needed things that you need for your pH measurement. And before you start making a pH measurement, it is important that you have performed your validation of CO2 and calibrated if this was necessary. So when everything is ready for the pH measurement, you remove the dish. And here it is important what you do immediately after removing it outside the embryoscope. You turn it briefly upside down. And why do you do that? It's because condensation droplet could form on the top, under the lid of this, and it will re-equilibrate with the remaining medium inside. Then you remove the silicone lid and put the probe inside and perform the pH measurement immediately. We cannot recommend you to remove the media to a tube or something else and put probe in, because this will bias the reading. So don't do that. Good. So in case that you see that the pH was a little bit too low according to your standard prescribed procedures, then it means that the CO2 concentration was a little bit too high. And then you go in and change the set point stepwise, and then you repeat your pH measurement again. And I think that was all.